Hello learners, welcome to mental health class. Today in mental health, we will talk about dopamine. What is dopamine? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter made in your brain. So as you are aware, neuro simply means brain and the brainstem. So when you talk about transmitter, it means the transmission from the brain or brainstem into the peripheral or into other organs of the body or parts of the body. So this neurotransmitter is made in your brain. It plays a role as a reward center. A reward center is, as you may be aware, when you talk about reward, it simply means you are paying off, or you are actually trying to respond in a certain way. If someone has done well, you give a good reward. If someone has not done well, you give a punishment reward. So dopamine plays a role as a reward center, meaning that is where judgment happens. That is what influences judgment in the brain or in the body. And in many body functions, including memory, movement, motivation, mood, attention, and other many more actions which the body may give out. So if your dopamine, in short, is in charge of your mood. If you are having a high mood or low mood, dopamine is in charge. If you feel motivated or if you feel discouraged, it's dopamine that controls all those feelings or emotions. For you to have a good memory, dopamine controls all those IQ. If you have a bad memory, that IQ is controlled also by the levels of dopamine. So whatever feeling you have, dopamine is involved. High or low dopamine levels are associated with disease. So whether you have a high dopamine or you have a low dopamine, there is a disease associated to it. Even a normal dopamine, there is also a disease that is associated to it. So some of you may think you have a stable dopamine, then you don't have a disease. No. When you have a high dopamine level, there's a disease associated. When you have low, there's a disease associated. Even normal one, there is a disease associated. This disease includes Parkinsonism disease, restless legs syndrome, and attention defect hyperactive disorders. So we'll talk about these diseases later on as we'll be looking at mental health conditions. But these are the common conditions or diseases that are associated with the levels of dopamine. Dopamine is a type of monoamine neurotransmitter. So among the neurotransmitters, there is one type which is called monoamine neurotransmitter. It's made in your brain and acts as a chemical messenger. So a chemical messenger, when you look at these hormones, there are a number of types of hormones. Generally, there is what is called hormone secreting hormone, and there is a specific hormone. So hormone secreting hormones, these are hormones that are secreted by the brain to go and activate another organ, so that organ can also secrete a specific hormone. I'll give an example. in the pituitary gland, a hormone will be released, which is called the hormone releasing hormone. It will go into the mammary gland, which are the breasts and so forth. So in the breast of a woman, there is what is called the mammary gland. That mammary gland will be secreted and will be activated, and it will secrete a hormone that is going to release milk. So a hormone releasing hormone will be released or will be secreted. It will go from the pituitary gland into the liver. The liver will secrete a hormone called um, um, beta and alpha hormones. Beta and alpha hormones, these are the hormones that enhances the secretion of insulin to control the sugar levels. So there is a hormone that goes to trigger a certain organ, so that organ can secrete a specific hormone. And there are some hormones that are specific, they are just direct. So when you look at dopamine, dopamine is a hormone that enhances other hormones to be secreted. It influences other hormones to be secreted. So this is a chemical messenger. So all hormones are chemicals, but this is a messenger, meaning the brain will produce dopamine so that dopamine can go and influence a certain organ on how to produce a certain hormone to influence the mentioned, such as mood and so forth. It is also a communicating message between nerve cells in your brain and your brain and the rest of your body. So dopamine connects your brain, the nerve cells, and also the rest of the body. Meaning whatever the body is communicating, dopamine will carry that message and take it from the body to the nerve cells. Through the nerve cells, it will reach, from the brain through the nerve cells, it will reach to a specific body organ and give it that message. And that body organ will react as according to how dopamine has brought such a message. So dopamine plays a very bigger role in a human body among all the types of hormones. It acts as a hormone. Dopamine, epinephrine, and the norepinephrine are the main catecholamines, which a catecholamine is a label based on having part of the same molecule structure. So when you look at dopamine, epinephrine, and the norepinephrine, these are the many, they fall under the category which is called the catecholamine. So a catecholamine itself is based on it is based on, in short, all these, they fall under this category with the same structure, molecular structure. They don't differ in its chemical component or the way they are made chemically. So epinephrine, I know some of you know epinephrine, that it is one of the drugs that is more dangerous because it deals with the brain. It deals with the brain. So it is in the same category with dopamine. So epinephrine is also a hormone. It is also a hormone. So these hormones are made by your adrenal gland. Adrenal gland is what produces these hormones that fall under the category of catecholamines. A small heart-shaped gland located on top of each of your kidneys. So on top of the kidney, that's where you find this type of a gland. Dopamine is also a neural hormone released by the hypothalamus in your brain. So when you check in your brain, the part of the hypothalamus is where dopamine is released. That is where it is released. It works much in connection with the adrenal gland. So diseases associated with low levels of dopamine. So dopamine levels determines the way someone is going to behave or to act. So for example, when you have low levels of dopamine, a person behaves as with attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So this attention deficit and hyperactive disorder, it is when you are talking to someone, they are not paying attention to what you are saying. Sometimes people tend to be away from the actual place where they are. You are with them discussing something, but in their mind, they are not with you. They are thinking of something else. They are thinking of something else. They are out of place, in short. So when you look at people with mental illnesses, many of them, they will tell you about things where they are not. You know, me in America, now I'm buying whatever. I'm traveling from America. I want to go by with a bicycle going to Dar es Salaam. So they will tell you things that are out of place. But in a normal life, each person who has low dopamine, they tend to have and not to pay attention to whatever they are doing. Whatever they want to do, they feel it is not actually helping them anymore. Whatever they feel, the story, they don't want to participate. Maybe sometimes they just want to be on their own. They feel as if talking to people does not mean or is not helpful to them. So mostly people feel like that, and they become hyper. They have a deficit in terms of hyperactivities. They can't do things that needs you to put more effort because they feel lazy talking. They feel lazy doing whatever they are doing. Some of them, they even feel lazy just to eat. So it means there is low levels of dopamine. Sometimes you wake up in the morning, you feel lazy, you can't do anything, you just want to sleep. That is a sign of low levels of dopamine. Then you also tend to have Parkinsonism disease. Parkinson disease is a brain condition that causes problems with movements. So people tend to have problem with movements. They have problems with sleeping. They can't sleep. They feel like pain coming from nowhere. I have no headache after 5 minutes. No, I feel stomach pains just like that. Not because they are sick, no, but because there is low levels of dopamine. The brain mistrigger, it misjudge things. Even in terms of movements, many of them, if they are moving, they move without proper direction. And some of them, they can't even move. They'll just be seated like that. They can't, they'll just be seated. Then it also tend to have to give restless legs syndrome. So when you look at the um, restless leg syndrome, so this condition usually is characterized by a nearly um, irresistible urge to move the leg, typically in the evenings. Sometimes you feel you fail to move your leg, but you want to move it. Your brain tells you to move it, but you feel you cannot afford to move it. Not because you can't move it, no. Like I said in the area at the first point at attention deficit. So even here, you feel lazy to move your leg, but in your mind, you think you want to move it, but you feel lazy. Even just to walk, you feel lazy. Mostly, you just want to sleep, but again, you can't sleep. You can't sleep again. You feel disturbed. When you want to sleep, you feel disturbed. You tend to have insomnia. Insomnia, which means lack of sleep, as if you have taken 20 liters of kung fu. But if you want to move again, you don't want. So you find that this challenges you. You cannot sleep. You cannot move your legs properly. You cannot do any activity. And you feel body pains, body aches, headache, sometimes the stomach, and so forth. Sometimes you feel as if it's malaria. Meanwhile, you don't have even malaria. It is just the low levels of dopamine. When you have higher diseases associated with high levels of dopamine, you have mania. So as we go on, we'll talk about mania. Mania patients are people who have different moods. Some of them, they talk too much. They talk more than they can swallow. But some of them, those who have hypomania, they talk low. Sometimes they are quiet. They cannot say anything. But mostly, if dopamine is high, people tend to talk too much. They talk and talk and talk. So if you have a friend who talks too much, just know that one is suspected to be a mania patient, meaning the levels of dopamine in that person is just too high. That's why mental health patients, they talk and they can talk anything. Then they also tend to have obesity, which is the over gain. They gain too much. So dopamine makes you to gain weight. It makes you to gain weight. And also addiction. When you become too much addicted to Coca-Cola, addiction to a specific type of drink, addiction to alcohol, addiction to water, addiction to tea, addiction to shima. So any addiction is a sign of higher levels of dopamine. So as you learners, check yourself first before you check your patients. Check yourself. If you have an addiction, just know that mostly you have, most likely you have a high level of dopamine. Diseases associated with both high and low levels of dopamine. Here we have schizophrenia. Schizophrenia. So, schizophrenia is a disorder that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly. It is a disorder that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly. So if you look at most mental patients, they can't think properly, they can't feel properly, they can't even behave clearly. They don't have a specific way of behaving. They will tell you I'm a soldier, now I've left my pistol in Charleston. Where is your pistol? Now I'm a pilot. I want to go and fly an aeroplane from, they'll tell you things that are not clear. They will tell you things that are not clear. Even their behavior is not clear. Most of them are able even to rape a child, either male or female. They all tend to have the same behavior. They tend to have similar behavior. If it is a female patient who easily fall in love with any male who is closer, whether a child or adult, and they can do anything. Equally, a male patient can also do the same, and the higher chances of rape are there. That's why mostly these patients are even taken vulnerable, especially the ladies. You would find a mental patient who is pregnant, a mental patient has children, because their behavior is not clearly, and these men who don't think clearly again, they take advantage of them. So schizophrenia is associated with either low or, it is associated with both low and high levels of dopamine. A lot of people have this condition, schizophrenia. A lot of people we meet here at schizophrenia. That is why you are able to talk to yourself. If you are able to talk to yourself, just know that you are a victim of schizophrenia disorder. And if you are not able to talk to yourself, then I don't know. It means you are not a human being, because any human being, a day cannot end without talking to yourself. So whenever you are talking to yourself, just know that your dopamine levels have become equal. They could be high, or they are not high, they are not low, but they have become equal. Again, if they become high, this is schizophrenia still is there. If it becomes low, again the schizophrenia is present. That's where we all meet. When someone say we are all mental patients, this is what it means. We are all schizophrenic patient. The only difference is the level of dopamine. If you have a slight higher level of dopamine, you talk to yourself to a certain percentage, and your behavior at some point is unclear to a certain percentage. And if you talk to yourself too much, just know that the level of dopamine maybe is too high or too low in that manner. But schizophrenia is found in any human being, because we all have dopamine, and dopamine secretion fluctuates. It can be high, it can be at a normal level, it can be low. But schizophrenia is present in both. I'm going to give you work. So this work is a discussion work. As a group, discuss the following 4 questions. As a group, discuss the following 4 questions. 1. What are dopamine agonists? What are dopamine agonists? 2. What are dopamine antagonists? What are dopamine antagonists? 3. What are dopamine reuptake inhibitors? What are dopamine reuptake inhibitors? 4. What's dopamine's role in addiction to recreational drugs? What are dopamine's role in addiction to recreational drugs? Thank you very much. Today's class ends here.